We are up here in Brooks, Maine, checking out the cabin of Peter Baldwin, and it's extremely difficult to see here. There's so little light available. We're upstairs in the loft. Here are the clothing storage areas. He's got hanging clothes on the right and some folded clothes here. All he's done is covered them in some light cloth close behind, framed out in pine. Super simple. As you can see, we're in the lofted area here. There's Sam, and he's got some bookshelves up top, windows admitting in light and air here, and a lot of windows here. This is the south side of the building. And we have the exhaust, the flue here, outputting from his wood stove. And in the top corner here, he has fashioned a beer keg, which he had a local welder put some fittings on, which has cold water pumped into, and then a thermosiphon circulates water down in through the back of his wood stove and around the flue pipe. I will describe how the water enters the tank in a minute. And here, also in this lofted area, is his office, which is extremely tight. Possibly could have been improved upon by putting some of these large filing cabinets in smaller space, but there's definitely an adequate space here for someone to read or write or do some sort of work. We are in an off-grid situation here. Peter has a 250 watt solar panel mounted on the south side of his balcony, which goes into a charge controller, an inverter, and a battery system, which we will see when we enter the utility area in the basement. He's also integrated this beautiful sort of protective railing here, just made out of wood, probably similar to the design of the orchard ladders that he makes. And we're gonna head down one of these very efficient staircases that he's fashioned here. Uses very little space compared to a normal staircase. Takes a little getting used to. So you can see that detail. Here we go. Again, I apologize for the quality of this video being so poor. There's very little light. And here is the entryway. Peter has incorporated a deck that wraps around the building here on this first floor, which has the advantage of allowing more space in the interior of the building. And so he's sort of sheltered the staircase so that when you're in the elements, you're not getting poured on, and you can actually make use of this space. He's got some firewood pre-cut out here. He's got a compost bin out there, a cooler for some food, or he might leave a pot from the stove out here as well, just to get cooled by the air. Enter in through the door, and he's got a very small mudroom vestibule area with some storage here for various items. A couple of pegs here for coats and his hat collection. Peter's also incorporated lighting from his inverter into the cabin, and what I really appreciate is that he didn't hide it behind the walls. If he ever needs to fix anything, he can see where everything is. And there are a bunch of these different pole lights throughout the cabin. Peter mentioned that he uses 300 watt hours per day. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the solar, but it's extremely conservative. Here is the bookshelf. Peter apparently likes to read books. This is a good thing. Really elegant storage here. Now check this out. The sill depth, 8 inches. He's using 2x8 walls in this building. Well, there's a good reason for that. He's able to achieve an enormous amount of insulation by doing this. And it's funny because the building looks much bigger on the outside than it feels on the inside because the walls are so thick. But that also gives you some really nice places to put things. I guess all flat surfaces eventually accumulate stuff. Here is the dining area. I'll try to step back so you can see that. So this is really a place where all of what you need to do can be accomplished in a very small space. And the wood stove is central for a number of reasons. It's going to radiate heat out into the space fairly uniformly here. It also heats into this slab. Last night we were having a fire and our feet were warm because this slab had absorbed a lot of the heat from the stove and kept it in the concrete. Moreover, this is black, facing a south-facing window. So we're able to get sunlight to just pour into this room to heat up the floor, which is going to then radiate that heat back out once the sun goes down. He's incorporated a series of different windowed or glass paned doors. I don't know the proper term for them here, but this is on the south side, and there's a balcony here which we can check out, or a deck rather. And he's got a pretty lovely view. This morning and last night we could hear the quaking aspen twittering away. He's got his orchard and garden area. It's not easy to see here, and a bunch of other outbuildings which we can check out. But this provides another usable space that doesn't compromise the square footage of his interior. And here is some diffused glass that's admitting light to his seed starts and other vegetables. We'll get to see that when we go down into the utility area. Here's the wood stove flue that we were talking about, and you can see there's a coil in here. That's a copper coil which is capturing some of the heat that's escaping through the pipe to bring that heat through the thermosiphon into the tank up top. And also here you'll see there is a radiator incorporated into the back of this small stove, which I looked up last night, is made in Kirkland, Washington. This is a Lopi, and he started a small fire this morning. But this is a very small stove. He said he might even go for something a little smaller for this space, but honestly the cooktop probably couldn't be much smaller to be useful. We did have a large cast iron pan on it last night, and that took up a lot of real estate. But this is also the type of design that allows you to open up the top of the stove so that you can actually get your pan to have the bottom right up against the flames. He's got a lot of cool little stuff that lets you know that he's been here for a while, like this old horn from some musical instrument at some point. He can use that so he doesn't have to put his head near the flame. He can stand up and sort of give the fire some oxygen. And we are now in the kitchen. It's in the same room. A little seating area here on this wall here on the west side. And this is a really small and efficient space. So there's a lot going on here, and I'll sort of describe as best I can. This cabinet is very interesting. Peter has designed a lot of this stuff, maybe based on things that he's been inspired by or seen in the past. And this is a design of his own, executed by him as well. He's made all of these things. This is a sort of storage area for food that might not need quite as much refrigeration as a fridge would offer, but it's passive or might just need some air to be drawn by a solar-powered fan. So on the bottom we have where air comes in, which comes through a tube that originally was nestled underground and passed underground for some time, so that the air that came through that tube would be about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. That air comes into this box down here, flows upwards. If you'll notice, all of these storage racks have the ability for air to come through them because they're just made of thin metal instead of being solid. Then there's an exhaust at the top, and that goes up through the roof of the house, and because of its height, the heat is going to want to rise and draw up through, making a chimney effect, exhausting out of the top. And he also, I think, has complemented the way that the air moves with a fan. Pretty cool. He said he just stopped using that about 3 weeks ago. It's early June, so that does a lot of good for him for many months of the year, which requires almost no electricity, or if he has the fan powered by solar, it requires none, or no cost. He's got a little drying rack here, some storage, cabinetry. He's added mirror material here, probably to give more light to the space. This is a 12-volt fridge, if I remember correctly. This is designed for boat. It's made by Nova, N-O-V-A, Cool, K-O-O-L. And this is a 12-volt fridge. It's 35 watts. He says that it runs 7 hours a day. So you can do the math. It's really not a lot of juice to run this. More storage under the sink. This is probably the most interesting part of the cabin to me personally. The water system. Peter dug, or had a well drilled, and the well was putting out 10 gallons a minute. Pretty high volumetric flow rate coming out of the well bore, and that well services both this cabin and a house next door. However, for this building, the water coming out of the well is actuated by a hand pump instead of using a pump that's powered by electricity. So this is really amazing in that, there's less electricity used, which is a benefit, but also it just works all the time, even if there isn't power. So this is made in northern Maine. The company is Bison Pumps. And here's how it works. You ready? 1 pint per thrust. Oh my gosh, that is elegant. It really brings joy to just have the comfort of knowing that you can have water by just actuating this beautiful stainless arm instead of having to worry about electricity being the limiting factor in your access to water, the most important thing you can have as a human being. Here's where this gets even more incredible. He has fitted on a bunch of different copper here, which we've talked about filling, allowing water to be filled into this beer keg, which is up there. So how does he get the water up into the beer keg so that he can have hot water? Here's how it happens. We're going to thread on this cap here. Now, the water coming out of the well is going to be forced into this tube. We're going to open up this valve, which would normally be closed so that water in the tank doesn't come back out, because it's gravity happening here. Opening it up, I'm going to pump. We're going to pump here until we see that output at the back of the sink there, that copper, overflow. That's when we know we're going to have enough water in the tank. I could keep going. This is just a demonstration, but anyway, I did this last night, and not even a few minutes in, there was a tank full of water. What this allows to happen is that the wood stove is cranking. It's thermosiphoning water circulating through these pipes into the beer keg, And now, by opening the hot valve on the sink, this water is coming out of that tank and it's warm. So it's gravity fed hot water, heated by wood, and it's a really beautiful expression of permaculture in practice. We're using one element, the wood stove, to provide multiple functions. Those functions being heat for the house, heated water, and the ability to cook, all with the same fuel. And it works even if there's no electricity, and the water, as we saw, is running by the strength of your arm. So it's a really elegant system. Peter's just come back here, and hi Peter.
Hey, what are you doing?
Just doing a little video for my memory here of your cabin. Thank you, and really appreciate this awesome spot.
You're welcome.